A while ago, I had the enviable task of picking any car I wanted to drive from the Porsche Museum toy box. And as you know, Porsche's history is full of amazing sports cars. The 911, the 356, the 924, the 944, and then there's like the sporty one-offs they made. And I had my choice of over 800 vehicles, and of those, Porsche says roughly 600 are ready to go at any moment. Turn the key, they are good to go. Other more specialized ones like the race cars take a bit more time, but basically I had my pick of the lot, and I chose this, which is a Porsche 914 4-cylinder. The guy that runs the museum workshop said in 15 years he thinks that maybe 10 people have driven this car. In fact, this car only has 20,000 kilometers on it. The Porsche crew at the museum do amazing work of restoration, but this one really didn't need it. This is mostly an original car. It was the personal car of a Porsche CEO going back a couple decades, although they weren't quite sure which one it was, but executive-owned car. Why the Porsche 914 and why not the 6-cylinder? I've driven a lot of classic 911s, but I had never gotten a chance to drive a 914, which is weird because they made 115,000 of them. They're quite popular for sports cars, but they just don't exist very much anymore. So I wanted to drive something different. And then they had the 6 and the 4, and well, to be honest, they only sold 3,300 of the 6-cylinder cars, and those are over $100,000 today. So I wanted to drive something more that people could actually buy and afford, like this. This is obviously a very nice original car, but you can still pick up a Porsche 914 under $20,000 Canadian pretty easily. They are out there, and I'm going to talk about what this is like. So, this is a European spec car. This exact one is a 1974 model, and because it's in Europe, it has downdraft carburetors, 2 of them. Oddly, if this was an American spec car, or Canadian spec, North American spec, it would actually have fuel injection, pretty sure. But the North American cars did come with fuel injection, basically like the Vanagon engine. This one, twin downdraft carburetors. Now, it is a 1.8, which means that this one makes 85 raging horsepower, which is not a lot. Because it's actually heavier than you think. This car weighs about 2,100 pounds, so in the world of compact sports cars, it's not that light. So let's get driving. Close our door. Interesting touch, there's a little glove box type compartment here on the door armrest. Only for the driver, passenger doesn't get one. The seat belts, because 1974, are weird. It was one of the first years for the shoulder belt in production cars, and people weren't quite sure how to do that. Before we get moving, I want to talk about this interior because the Porsche 914 is a pretty small car, but it's weirdly spacious inside. That's because it's mid-engine, there's no drive shaft tunnel running through here, and this one doesn't even have the optional console. The front floor is just flat. Like, I can just look all the way over, there's no encumbrance to anything in this interior. It's quite spacious, I have a lot of headroom. I actually have the seat quite far forward because the clutch has a long travel. But this is absolutely a car that big and tall people can fit in quite easily because of its mid-engine design. So let's hit the road in Porsche's first ever mid-engine production car. Turn the key, roll tube gas. The familiar Volkswagen sound. Now people, before you get all not a real Porsche on me, the long story short of this is that Porsche, the company, would design this for Volkswagen, and it was supposed to replace the Type 34 Karmann Ghia and the 912 at the same time. It was a joint project from the start. The deal was that it was a handshake agreement with the chairman of Volkswagen, and when the chairman of Volkswagen died, the new guy said, I don't care what the previous handshake agreement was, there's nothing on paper. That meant that Porsche had to share in the tooling costs, which made these cars quite expensive for the Porsche version. Long story short, the Porsche version was kind of dead on arrival because of that. But we still got to enjoy the car. So, clutch is floor hinge, push it all the way in. This 5-speed shifter is famously tricky. Basically, it's a 911 transmission which is shifted at the back. The shift rods to go there, they have to go from here, under the engine, past the transmission to the very back, and then move the shift forks. You have to like slap, karate chop the shifter over to the left, down into first. Now we're in first gear. Later on in production, they did actually switch to a side shift transmission, which fixed a lot of the weird sensations, but this one is the good old-fashioned tail shift. So let's go up this little Alpine pass here. 85 horsepower on the way. And then you have to like wait. Oh, no, find the gear. Second. So you're not really speed shifting this thing because it's not a shifter that immediately builds confidence, you could say. But underway, it just got this beautiful noise. The handling is great. This is, of course, manual steering. There's no anything in here. And even though it only has 85 horsepower, on the Autobahn on the way here, I hit 100 miles an hour in this thing. It will move out because it doesn't have a lot of frontal area. But you have that Volkswagen sound behind you, that thrum pulling you forward. Not a super high red line here. It doesn't like to do much more than 5,000. I mean, it's a pretty humble engine, but it does have Porsche roots. Now, heel toe in this thing, the downshifts are a real trick. I don't know how people manage that stuff, but it is a mystery to me yet. Now, the cool thing is that the mid-engine balance is just so good in this car. Oh, away we go. Look at it just go right around there. Full throttle, baby. Hear that? This is even on classic Vredestein tires. They're brand new, but they're the same tread pattern of tires back in the 70s. So it's driving pretty much how it would when it was new. And like I said, there's only 20,000 kilometers on this car. Once again, up in the second. It takes a long time to get used to the shift pattern as well, because first is down and left. It's not how you're used to it. At least not how I'm used to it. But the 85 horsepower thing is pretty overblown as an issue. Like, I don't think you're gonna need more than that to have fun. Like I said, it's enough to get this car to 100 miles an hour. You'll be fine. Now, I guess the good thing is that because the shift pattern is kind of weird, your second and third shifts are in a line. They're pretty easy, and that's what you really end up using on the road. But I just love driving this car. The balance is so good. It's just a nice neutral car. It's got big, soft sidewalls, soft springing. It's just a joy to just drive this thing. Listen to that engine behind you. It's a real treat, this car. And look at the cornering grip this has. The steering weight is pretty heavy once you load it up, but again, it's a manual setup. And we are scooting up this hill just fine with 85 horsepower. Now the 6 only makes 110, so the power difference isn't even that great, in my opinion, for the cost. Of course, you can 6-cylinder swap these, but a Porsche 6-cylinder is an expensive engine to keep running. But the view down the hood, that sloping hood and the peaked fenders, so classically Porsche. I just love it. Now, one of the other cool parts about the 914 is that the top comes off. This is a fiberglass lift-off hardtop. They were all like that. They're all Targa tops. So it can be an open top or a closed top car, depending on what you want. I've left it on today just because I like it that way. But it could just as well come off, and it stows in the back trunk, of which there are 2. You get 2 trunks. But it's just an evolving sports car to drive, and the handling, the lack of body roll, is so far ahead of like British cars of the time, your MGBs and Triumphs. This is really like a modern sports car for the era. And I really just don't find myself wishing it was a 6. The 4 is its own unique thing. And I think that this is probably one of the better values in classic sports cars. You get this great handling, you get the Porsche lineage, and you get an open top and a closed top with 2 trunks. What more could you want? The other thing about this car is that fifth is a really deep overdrive, which is cool because it means that this thing is really relaxed on the highway. It's really meant for that Autobahn cruising. And most classic sports cars are screaming at high speeds because their gears are so short. Not here in the 914. Great car. 4-wheel disc brakes. I just think that the 914 is kind of slept on as a sports car. I get that the looks are unconventional. Now, part of that is because it was designed to be a Volkswagen and a Porsche. And supposedly the thinking was that it should look kind of like both and neither at the same time. So it doesn't look like a traditional Porsche, and that really did hurt its popularity, I think. In fact, this car has a Volkswagen Porsche badge on the back versus the American ones were only badged Porsches. Originally, the idea was that the 4-cylinder cars would be Volkswagens and the 6-cylinders would be Porsches. But because of the cost of the thing, the 6-cylinder was pretty economically, unviable. So they only sold it until 1972, and that was that. The handling is so sweet, and these cars did race at Le Mans. I mean, how could you say that you could get a Le Mans pedigree car for less money? It's out of this world for me. This is such a great bargain today. And I've wanted to drive one of these for a long time, and I gotta say, it lives up to it. It's fun. I just like the sound of it. It is hard to get gears though. Like I said, I think if you drove this long enough, you can get used to its weird shift pattern. It's just me being a newbie. But I think beyond the sporty side of things, it's such a usable classic. This interior is so big. Look at all the room I have, considering that this is not a very large car. And this car will cruise at 100 miles an hour. And it's a 1.8. I just think the Porsche 914 4-cylinder hits a lot of boxes for a practical, affordable classic. And I just had to drive one to see if my hunches were true. I think it's just built for that European kind of driving where you're doing really fast highway stuff. You're going up and down these mountain roads, and then you also go through tiny villages, but then you also are going down these high-speed auto routes. It just kind of does it all. But I think my major takeaway is don't sleep on the 914. There's a lot of fun to be had for not a lot of money. The handling is just so good. It's so neutral. I've just never driven a classic car that handled like this. They usually have some more roll, some more push. This handling is just superb. And the guys at the museum tells me that the 4-cylinder is just a little bit sweeter than the 6 because it's that much lighter. And on these beautiful roads, I am inclined to believe them. So, there you have it. A quick review of the Porsche 914. Now, I'm going to go into even more nerdy detail on my written review, so you can check that out at Driving.ca. Now, speaking of our website, I also did a road test while I'm here of the Porsche Cayman GT4 RS. Because to me, this humble 4-cylinder car and that Apex Predator are the bookends of the mid-engine Porsche family. And I had to drive both. So if you're curious about what it's like to drive a no-chill, absolute beast of a car on this exact same road, check out our website or check out our YouTube channel because there is a video and a review of both. For more classic cars, news, and reviews, don't forget to check us out at Driving.ca.